Thank you to our fearless leader for saying yes to this big ask in the first place. When we had just a little vision for the project, you were the one who allowed all this to come to fruition.
And thank you to Mr. Robertson and Mr. Schuweiler for continuing to support this project.
Beyond our immediate Sage Creek community, we would also like to thank our superintendent, Dr. Churchill, and the CUSD Board of Trustees for making this possible.
Thank you, PTSA, the Sage Creek Foundation, and the Carlsbad Ed Foundation for your charitable donations and for always rallying around this project.
To all of our parents, professionals in the room, staff, accountability buddies, and all Bobcat family members, we appreciate your generosity in hosting, advising, and supporting our students.
It truly takes a Carlsbad village, and you all have done that, and much more. So thank you.
Each and every single one of you have contributed in some form to empowering our students to make an impact on the wonderful world around them. Let's get into this year and why this Genius Project group in particular was beaming with empowerment.
You know, Mary, I like that word, empower. It has a nice ring to it.
It really does, Gray.
And as a matter of fact, that is our theme for this year's Genius Project Symposium.
shocked and saddened to see that a large chunk of my peers just didn't care about politics. It was that feeling you get when you find something that you think is really cool, and you show your friends and they just kind of look at you weirdly. But in this case, that cool thing affected them on a daily basis. Data from a survey I sent out to Sage Street students showed that 25% were unsure of their political stances, and 15% had no stances whatsoever. This coupled with the already low youth voter turnout left me feeling that my peers and I would be the next generation of eligible voters who should be prepared to tackle whatever issues face us in upcoming elections. This led me to what would become my genius project: voter registration of young citizens. The drives I've done over the past year and a half have been in two distinct locations. The first was right here, on the Sage Street campus, where, in mid-April, myself and a few friends from the class of 2018 led a week. And when the time came to go out and vote, although I was a little stuck on what to do at first, the thought I heard that everyone's favorite and best used time in school, advisory, was designed to host lessons important to the Beauchamp community. What better opportunity to learn about civic engagement in a class that everyone is totally engaged in. Advent, however, didn't quite agree with me. Politics is, I can see, a touchy subject, now more than ever, and the school felt that it was dangerous waters. In the first meeting that I had with our vice principals, I told them that voter registration was a politically neutral civic duty. Over the next 5 months, I met with and emailed our advisory coordinator and our vice principals several times, and on my presentation on how to register to vote, shared with 7 different people from the admin team to make sure that no side of the political spectrum was pushed in the slightest. Of course, once I finally got approved, we actually did it onto the schedule, which was, to say the least, treated less than what I would have hoped for. Clearly, there was some progress. Quite a few more than this, if we're being honest. But in my mind, it was all worth it. When my presentation was finally given to the seniors, I asked them to more of our class, giving them a voice in our democracy. The second part of the drives that I ran over the past year and a half were the Jewish Community Center in La Jolla, where I've been participating in theater for 3 years prior. The first time I ran a drive was during the intermission of a show I was in, a production of Les Mis. I felt it was rather fitting that in the show I felt I played a student fighting for the equality and representation of the population, which was exactly what I was doing in real life. Before every show, I would give a small speech talking about civic engagement, and asking the audience to come out and see me in the lobby during intermission to come register to vote. By the time the show closed, I brought my count of young voters to just over 100. I was even lucky enough to have then candidate Sarah Jacobs from California's 49th Congressional District attend one of the shows and chat with me about my work in politics, registering, volunteering, and protesting. By the time the show closed, I approached my director about the possibility of continuing the program during other productions. But as an up-and-coming senior, I knew that my time running these drives would come to a close rather quickly. A few of my friends expressed interest in the program and asked to work with me on it. As of now, I'm current junior and sophomore in the program, which is in registration tables at 72 different events, registered over 500 young citizens. In fact, actors as young as 11 have approached me about the possibility of running the program when they turn 16. And while I am very proud of these numbers, thank you, and the 2 knuckleheads who run the program now, they're not what makes this work so special to me. What I loved about doing this, what I loved learning in this process, is the impact that one person can have on a community. And not just in politics. That was just how it happened for me. I want to end on a story of a young man named James I met during this program. James was born with Down syndrome, and had been looked down upon throughout his entire life. But when he ran out of the theater to see me, with the biggest smile on his face, he would have never known it. His mom ran out behind him, eager to get James registered with me, and we went through the form line by line until we were done. Afterwards, he gave me a tight hug and said thank you for making me feel normal. While my actions were nothing but routine, kindness, and help, they changed that young man's entire world. And that's the power that everyone has. The power to change the world. Maybe not everyone's world, maybe not even a few people's, but affecting just one person is more than enough to be worth everything. Thank you.
interviews to help us spotlight these amazing people, amazing projects.
And with that, give it up for our first spotlight. Kaylin Sablon on Painting It Back.
Congratulations on being a spotlight feature on the Genius Project Symposium.
Thank you so much.
Can you describe your project?
Yeah, so it was actually started as a backup. I was originally going to start an SAT study club, but my mom said I should do something more artistic, and so I thought, why not give art to a place that has special meaning to me? So I painted a mural at Brady Children's Hospital.
Great. And so can you tell me just like how did this project come about? How did you start?
Right. The first idea, or the first part, was to figure out why I was going to paint at Brady Children's Hospital. And it actually started because I was there during the first year I moved to California because I had an asthma attack. So I was like, okay, let's give art to Brady Children's Hospital, which we did. And then, yeah, everything went smoothly from there.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you have any difficulties?
A little bit. Having to get to San Diego was very difficult with all the driving, and my parents were not down to drive me, so I had to get a lot of my friends to actually help out with that, and they helped with the mural, and I gave them community service hours.
Awesome. So what does this mural mean to you?
It means, what does it mean to me? It's really special because I do love art, and I did have to give back to Brady Children's Hospital somehow. So giving something I love doing back to a place that has special meaning to me is definitely very important.
Awesome. And what does this mural look like?
So the mural is actually 3 walls. So it's the wall with the door, the wall with the hospital bed next to it, the window, and then the back wall. So it's a picture of the Torrey Pines golf course with the Brasher family dog Hono. It's this big white chow chow. And then also butterflies all over the place because that was the clinic I painted at is their main thing.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. That's a great picture.
Yes.
So what's your main takeaway of this project?
My main takeaway is that sometimes a late project is better than no project at all, and that if you're more passionate about something, you're more likely to finish.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kaylin.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Kaylin, congratulations on being a spotlight feature on the Genius Project Symposium.
Thank you so much.
Kaylin's project really showed that everyone's Genius Project journey is constantly evolving, and that in the end, following your passion is all that truly matters. And it's always great to see a passion turn into something that can benefit others.
That's totally right. Passion is everything. Kaylin's art was beautiful, and I hope she continues to create it. Braden, however, I really hope art isn't his passion, because the rumor around campus was that a 5-year-old was showing him up with some butterfly drawing skills. Butterflies, Lexi.
Oh yeah, I definitely heard about those rumors. Well, enough about the other MCs. We have a show to run. Up next, we have Carla Kalini.
Carla's charitable, heart-filled genius project aimed at empowering girls on a completely different continent through a sport we all know and love.
Here is Carla to tell us a little bit more about her reunited family.
Since I was very young in my family when I moved to the States, I don't really remember much of my make sure it was 100% safe. My dad and I contacted everyone we knew in Egypt and asked them questions about places or things to stay away from and why I am or am not allowed to wear there. I wrote down addresses and phone numbers of people in Egypt as well as information of the U.S. Embassy. We set an hour-by-hour agenda of my whole trip. Although we knew it was inevitable that something unexpected would happen, we took every precaution to prepare me for the worst. Now the only problem was actually getting to Egypt. I have never flown internationally alone before, so that was pretty challenging.
here doesn't have my butterflies or whatever. I mean, I didn't get the memo that he's the next Monday in the making. Anyways, Gavin was finally right about one thing, because volleyball is something that both of my mind will be in our lives. I'm so glad she's not only able to teach, but also bond with her family over something she's so passionate about.
Family is so important, and so is mentor support, which is why this year we implemented a new student-to-teacher mentor program called Accountability Buddies. This means that every student here on campus received either a teacher or staff member of their very own. Our next spotlight, Lucas Gutierrez, took advantage of this mentor program.
In one sentence, what was your Genius Project about?
My Genius Project was helping a car show for a local elementary school to raise money for field trips and school supplies.
That's awesome. And what exactly did you do at the car show?
I modernized a judging system to better the judging aspect of the car show.
That's incredible. And how much time did you have left when you finally started your project?
I would say about 2 trimesters.
So not a lot of time.
No.
And you both worked kind of on the project together as a mentor, Mrs. Brown. What was that relationship that you guys developed?
It was a really good experience.
Yeah, it was great. Lucas met the needs that we had at Southville and helped us make our car show even better.
Well, that's awesome. And how did you develop your original passion for cars?
It started through my dad. He influenced me a lot in the car industry, and I just developed a strong passion.
And that was helpful in your project, you think?
Yes, definitely.
And I know that there was a little bit of age discrimination between the car owners and you.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so the men with cars saw me as a young teen with no car knowledge. So I let the judging do the talking and kind of just let it show for itself.
And how did you combat that? Was there anything that you said to them, or?
When they would come to me to tell me about their cars, a lot of the time I knew that information already, so I would kind of just tell them a fact about their car that a lot of them didn't know, so that was cool.
So they created a lot of credibility, you think?
Yes.
That's
definitely.
great. And I know that, what was that feeling like when you realized how much money you had raised and that your project was a success?
It felt good. We ended up raising over $10,000.
Wow.
And a lot of school supplies for the elementary school, so it felt really good.
That's amazing. Well, it seems like you've had such a great project. You were able to have fun, continue with your passion, and raise money in the process. And thank you so much for being here today, Mrs. Brown and Lucas.
Thank you.
Being here today, Mrs. Brown and Lucas.
Thank you.
It was amazing that Lucas donated all his proceeds to a local elementary school.
You know, Gavin, that is what the Genius Project is all about. Following your passions to help others within your community.
While we're on the topic of community impact, our next speaker, Rose Peterson, helps some of the elderly Carlsbad residents with one of the most complicated inventions imaginable, the iPhone. Dun, dun, dun!
No kidding. Even I'm starting to have a hard time keeping up with the technology of our time, and I'm only 18.
Well, here is Rose, the Genius Project that is not only helpful to the older generations, empowering them with knowledge, but also apparently to Lexi as well.
Hi, I'm Rose Peterson. I'm 17, and I know everything. I know what's best for me, right from wrong, and whatever you have to tell me is irrelevant, because it's all about me. 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 I'm not alone in my thinking. Most teens think of themselves. I mean, we are part of the I generation, right? I generation meaning I want this, I want that. We think for ourselves. But not only does the meaning of I generation expose how self-centered us high schoolers are, but it concentrates on our love for the I's. iPhones, iPods, iPads, you name it. We've mastered these iDevices by the age of 10. However, there are some generations that haven't mastered it at all, or it takes them a little bit longer. My grandparents received their first iPhones at the young age of 76. I received mine at age 12. this is a great way for her and others of her generation to learn how to navigate their smartphones. I can teach the things that seem simple to me, yet so difficult to her and others. What a great idea for my Genius Project. Tech Talks, Teaching the Future to the Past was my pitch title at last year's Genius Project Forum. I would teach senior citizens how to operate their smartphones. Where do I start? Who do I talk to? Where do I even hold these classes? At this point in time, with all these questions circling my head, I didn't think this was possible. Let's be realistic here. A senior in high school in charge of a class of senior citizens. That doesn't sound right. Regardless, I pushed through. In the fall, I started contacting people that work for the city of Carlsbad. I got in touch with Chris Hazeltine, director of the Parks and Rec Department. Chris thought I had a great idea and put me in touch with Margaret Hamer, the recreation manager for the Carlsbad Senior Center. Margaret was an integral part of my project. We discussed dates, times, subject ideas, flyers. My plan was coming together. We set 4 Saturday mornings in January to hold the classes at the new Pine Avenue multi-generational building. I sent out a Google form to the entire school, and thankfully got 9 volunteers to assist me. There was no turning back. This was really going to happen. While enjoying my Christmas day in Chicago, I started planning for my first class on January 5th, only 11 days away. We would be covering the topic of photo management. Days later, Margaret notified me that only 3 people had signed up for my first class. I was excited, but I wish more people had signed up. In anticipation to some kind of technical difficulties, I arrived early. And sure enough, I forgot my computer. Then, once we were able to find a computer, we couldn't get it to connect to the overhead projector. Although we had a little bit of struggle setting up, and we ended up setting up in another room, we had 10 minutes to spare. To my surprise, 12 students showed up to my first class. I started presenting slow and loud. 15 minutes in, my presentation was done, and I delivered all the content I prepared. Now what? There were 45 minutes left. Let's call this one-on-one time. My faithful volunteers and I walked around to answer questions and give personal advice. At the end of the class, I arrived home excited and relieved. The other topics we covered included Google accounts, apps, and cyber safety. Each class ran exactly like the first, 15-minute presentation and 45 minutes of one-on-one time to answer personal questions. I was beyond impressed at what I had accomplished. At the end of each class, I wrote down in great detail what had occurred, in search of an aha moment, showcasing what I had learned. That moment never came. As the great Veruca Salt once said, "Daddy, I want a new Palooka and I want it now." And did she get a new Palooka? No. She went down the garbage chute after trying to steal the golden goose from Willy Wonka. I related to her misfortune of going down the garbage chute whilst in search for what I had learned from my Genius Project. There wasn't one overarching lesson, but I know at least 4 people benefited from my project. Lynn learned how to transfer pictures from her computer, phone, and hard drive into a Google account we helped set up with her. Joey learned how to get directions from Google Maps. Elaine learned how to delete unwanted text messages and create contacts. And Armando learned how to take a selfie and text it to his granddaughter while sporting a smile from ear to ear.
That little thing right there.
On the surface, these 4 people who attended Tech Talks with Teens learned some great tips. But now, every one of them is able to connect to others in a way that they hadn't been able to before. On their phones. The Genius Project isn't supposed to answer the question of how many. How many t-shirts did you sell? How many likes did you get? How many heads did you turn? How many people attended your class? It's supposed to answer the question of who? Who is this really about? Me? No. Who does this affect? Me? No. Who am I helping? Me? No. I can tell you confidently that all the answers to those questions are not me. And your answers to those questions shouldn't solely be about you either. You see, no matter what generation you are a part of, it's not always about you. opportunity arises to serve others, take it, because it is so rewarding. So hi, I'm Rose Peterson. I'm 17, and I know I don't know everything. Thank you.
So I would have paid money for my parents to take that class.
I'm really glad that Rose was able to help those people out. Because I know whenever we see our grandparents, it's always the same two questions of, how do I send a text message? Why can't you be more like Bonnie?
I've always had a wild imagination and big dreams. I would have loved to have been a part of this next project.
This past summer, Nicole UM traded in the beach and sleeping until noon for a crazy creative science summer camp for kids.
Could you tell me a little bit about your Genius Project?
So for my Genius Project, I created a science summer camp for kids at Buena Vista Elementary and Avia Oaks Elementary.
That's cool. And what were some of the challenges you faced while creating it?
This process was a lot more difficult than I had planned for it to be. My first challenge was scheduling-wise. My mentor, who works through Carlsbad Educational Foundation, she suggested that I try to do it in 2 weeks because I was doing it at 2 different kids care sites. So my camp turned from 1 week into 2 weeks. So.
Wow. And what were some of the experiments you did with these kids?
So some of these experiments were a bouncy ball, we made bouncy balls, soap-powered boats, we made slime, we blew up a balloon using vinegar and baking powder.
Yeah, and how did you pay for all of these?
I applied for a grant actually provided by Dr. Poth, who is associated with our biomed program, and luckily I received the grant and I was able to pay for all my supplies.
That's cool. And what was your takeaway with the Genius Project?
My takeaway was definitely knowing that I was able to positively impact these children's lives. A lot of these kids are still trying to discover what they like, what they don't like, so whether I was able to help them figure out if they liked or disliked science, it was just good knowing that I'm able to help filter out what they want to do with their futures and everything.
Yeah, that's totally awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So Nicole, could you tell me a little bit about your Genius Project?
So for my Genius Project, I created a science summer camp for kids at Buena Vista.
Alright, I'm going to be the first person to say it out loud. That looked awesome, and I'm really hurt that I didn't get an invite. But I am happy that a bunch of aspiring scientists got some fun, hands-on experience with the community last summer.
You know, the beautiful thing about the community we have, not just in Carlsbad, but here at Sage Creek, is that everybody has a different story to tell.
That could not be more true. Just a few weeks ago, our entire school got together to cheer on Mrs. Olivia by wearing pink from head to toe and forming a giant ribbon on our field to support her fight against breast cancer.
It's times like that when I realize how lucky we are to be members of this community.
Our next speaker, Kylie Valency, takes being a member of the Bobcat community to an entirely new level. She created a support group for Carlsbad kids who have had a parent affected by cancer.
Tonight, Kylie will take the stage and share her hopeful TED Talk with us all, one that truly captures tonight's theme of empowerment.
This story starts all the way back on February 9th, 1966. It was a windy Wednesday in the city of Angels. A small family was gaining a new member. A little boy in which they named Darren Gray Valency. Darren lived a typical life. One brother, one sister, 2 working parents, a strong love for astronomy, art, and all things business. But behind the smile of a young, curious mind was someone whose body was fighting against him. At the age of 2, he was diagnosed with herpula. At the age of 6, Raynaud's disease. At the age of 10, rheumatoid arthritis. And at the age of 16, scleroderma. By the time Darren could think about what song to learn on the drums, his next tennis match, or his future goals, he had 4 autoimmune diseases. With this, doctors didn't expect him to live past the age of 18. But despite it all, he always had hope. Now, let's jump to 2007. Darren is now 41, married to the love of his life, Lisa, and they have a young 5-year-old daughter, me. A few years before this, once again, his health was starting to dwindle. The pain was increasing, breathing was getting harder, and sicknesses weren't getting better. In May of 2007, my dad went in for a lung biopsy, and it was finally discovered and diagnosed that he was battling stage 4 lung cancer. From that day, doctors gave him a few days to 6 months to live. Every day after that, he woke up, went to the doctors for hours, came home and worked, took more medicine, gave himself shots, refilled oxygen tanks, worked some more, and spent time with his family. For the next 3 months, he continued this every day, all with a little bit of hope. But on August 27th, his mind wasn't giving up, but his body was struggling to continue. And at 2:14 a.m., Darren, my dad, took his last breath. So, at the age of 5, I started the grieving process, feeling as if I was the only one in the world going through something like this. But I soon found out that millions of kids are affected by a parent's cancer, just like me. And so with that, I knew that one day I wanted to help others in the same position. So when the Genius Project was introduced, I instantly knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a group for elementary through high school students in Carlsbad who have been affected by a parent's cancer. And I knew exactly what I wanted to call it, Ray of Hope. Named after my dad, I wanted the group to give kids the opportunity to meet others in the same position as them, to show them that they are not alone, and to bring a little bit of hope into their lives. Now, it's been about a year since I started to put my plans into action, and my end product doesn't look like what I originally imagined. But I can confidently say that I wouldn't change it for anything. The majority of my work didn't start until December of 2018. I set out with a plan to host 4 meetings in the month of February. I composed a very thought-out flyer, email, and Google sign-up form, and I sent it out to all 16 Carlsbad Unified principals. Instantly, I got numerous responses, all with words of encouragement and the fact that they would look for students who may be interested. About a week after I sent out those emails, on January 22nd, my first family signed up. 2 little brothers, Zachary and Zane, who lost a parent to cancer a few years ago. The next few weeks, I constantly checked to see if more signed up. But to my dismay, I got none. When this group was simply a vision, I had a lot of support. But I also had my fair share of adults who told me that I would not be able to make my dream a reality. Some said the group was too narrow, while others said it was too broad. However, the thing that I was death and the ones that they loved so much that they lost. More so, it wasn't that they didn't want to talk about these things, but it was that they didn't want to talk to me, a 17-year-old girl with no official credentials or grief training. Despite the fact that I've learned a ton from these adults in my life, when I heard this, I knew that they were wrong. As someone who was once in the position as the children I was seeking for my group, I knew that talking to a 17-year-old girl with no official credentials was exactly what I wanted, and frankly needed at that time of my life. Regardless of the fact that I have not gone to college, or for that matter, even graduated high school, sometimes experience means a lot more than a neatly framed piece of paper. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that if a child is going through a parent's cancer, it can be extremely beneficial to see a trained professional. However, a trained professional can't show them that it's going to be okay. That despite all the pain and sorrow and the stolen childhood fun, life gets better. So, with my dream to help those that I was once in the position of, I decided to cancel the first 2 meetings and send out another email to the schools in hopes of more responses. This time, I received word from many that due to my lack of credentials, they couldn't help me and that they wished me luck. And with that, I realized that this big group I had been dreaming about would only consist of Zachary and Zane. My friend and fellow senior Madison Gurlitz, who also lost her dad to cancer at a young age, told me that she would come to the meetings to help in any way needed, which was a huge relief. But as February 20th approached, I was feeling more and more nervous. I started to feel like there was going to be no point in the group with the boys only having 2 seniors to talk to. But let me tell you, that changed very quickly. As they piled out of the car, I was around a burst of energy, laughter, and smiles. They instantly started asking me questions, and by the time we even made it up to the room, I knew it was going to be okay. At that meeting and the following one, we played games, worked on some art, and talked. We talked about school, Harry Potter, soccer, our favorite colors, and flowers, and cancer and death, and the ones that we loved so much that we lost. and Zane yelled, "Wait, you lost a parent to cancer just like us? So you made this group because you actually know how we feel? That's pretty awesome." And from that moment with Zane and on, I knew that I had it all wrong. I was actually making an impact by providing something much more meaningful: connection. A connection, in the words of Zachary, was all he really needed. So, after our 2 meetings at school, the boys asked if we could continue meeting. So I talked to their parents, and I now continue to see them at their house. Sometimes we play games, or read books, or more often than not, I find that they are the ones asking me if we can talk about the pain or the memories of our loved ones. But no matter what we do, my heart warms with every smile or laugh I hear from them. And I can owe it all to the hope that I kept in my heart through the process. However, I'm just one side of the story. Here's Zachary and Zane on what ray of hope means to them.
It sort of helps me when I am sad, and I just remember the group. Well, it helps because you've experienced it, so you can tell me what you've learned. It's sort of important that you get to learn about other people, and you get to know other people that are similar to you. Have us forget about everything and stop worrying about that we lost a parent. It's sort of like saying, even though you've had a lot of bad things happen in your life, you still have good stuff in your life, and you should take advantage of that.
Just like throughout my dad's life, or when it came down to his final breath, or when I was nervous walking into my first meeting with Zachary and Zane, I've learned that it's hope that gets us through. Hope is a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. And so, no matter how small you might feel, or how large your wishes and desires are, trust me, sometimes all you need is a little ray of hope. Thank you.
What you did for those kids was truly remarkable, providing the sort of therapy from the perspective that they wanted to hear it most, a kid, just like them.
At its heart, the Genius Project empowered you to share your story from your heart.
Despite being told no time and time again, you did what you believed in, and you truly changed the life of those 2 young boys.
Imagine if we all took risks as big as that. Let's take that kind of thought into the intermission.
Grab a snack, use the restroom, and visit our wall of fame photos. Be ready for a second half of stellar spotlights and speakers.
We'll see you right back here in 10 minutes.
us a little bit more than the Brashers.
Yes, and we're back with another awesome Knock Your Socks Off Genius Project. But on a quick side note, please remember to put your socks back on after this presentation. It can get a little bit smelly in here, okay? Anyways, Lexi, a little birdie told me that you did a little improv in last year's senior directing showcase with our next speaker.
As a matter of fact, I did, Gavin. Allison and I were improvisational partners in crime at last year's senior directing showcase. As stressful as it sounds, it was actually my favorite project to be a part of.
That does sound a little bit stressful. But hey, who knew that one person's theater project can result in another person's passion project? And here is Allison Del Grande to share her story on getting from concept to punchline.
In the world of improvisation, the word no is forbidden. Your answer to every offer given to you by a scene partner starts with the phrase, yes, and. You take whatever comes your way and put your own spin on it, turning whatever might have been a no into a yes. This is the mentality that my Genius Project was built on, and this is the mentality that got me here, standing in front of you today with a finished Genius Project. Now, I'll admit, when the Genius Project was first introduced to me, I was clueless. I knew I wanted to do something with my passion for comedy, but beyond that, I drew a blank. So I went to Miss Alberts for help, and together we stumbled upon the idea of bringing a comedy improv team here to Sage Creek. Now, for those of you who don't know, improv is a type of theater in which you stand up on the stage unscripted, and with a suggestion or two from the audience, you create your own original scene. It was my worst nightmare, but as much as I wanted to run away from the idea, something inside of me was whispering yes and. So I went for it. After some research, I was an expert in this whole comedy improv thing, or comedy sports as it's more formally known. Comedy Sports is an organization based in LA that hosts competitive comedy improv matches for their team of professional actors. We would be competing in their high school league, going up against other local schools in comedy improv matches, judged on audience laughs. And in an attempt to seem like a typical high school sports team, they compete on a giant piece of turf, wear opposing colored uniforms, and even bring in a referee to judge the match. Now, my first step to getting this program off the ground was to get in contact with the Comedy Sports headquarters and let them know what my plans were. After an email and a few days of anxiously waiting, they finally replied with what seemed like an infinitely long list of steps. The most daunting of the steps by far were the ones that included money. $800. That's how much it costs to start a comedy sports team at your school. It includes 5 private workshops, a mock match, and endless support from their team of professional actors. How on earth was I supposed to single-handedly raise $800 for a program most people didn't even know existed? Well, this is when the yes and mentality really came to life within my project. Instead of seeing this as a roadblock and backing down, I saw it as an opportunity for growth and took the challenge. After some thought, I decided the best way was just to start asking. Comedy Sports is a theater-based program, so why not ask the theater department to borrow the funds? Well, after drafting and revising my 2-page proposal, we had the funds and we were off and running from there. Summer went by, and at the beginning of the school year, everything seemed to be moving at the speed of light, and I was not ready. We had a meeting up in LA, and frankly, I was overwhelmed. They handed me a 60-page manual on how to be a student manager, pretty much telling me that I was in charge of everything, and that everything seemed to get bigger and bigger every time I checked. Getting people to join the team was quite the task. I made lots of Canva flyers, advertised the team in the announcements, got a shout out from the stage, set up a booth at Club Rush, and even had Ms. Alberts as my personal recruiter. Even after all of that, I was afraid we wouldn't have enough people. In order to compete, you need at least 8 members, and even that seemed like a stretch at the time. But the phrase I should have been repeating was yes and. Yes, it's going to be challenging, and if I keep working towards it, everything will work out. Sure enough, by the time I held my first official meeting, 17 people showed up. Now, although that might not seem like a lot, knowing that there were other students on campus who shared my passion for comedy and were willing to stick with me as I figured this out was such a rewarding feeling and kept me going throughout. Now, although our recruitment problems were solved, our money problems were still lingering. That $800 from the drama department was actually a loan in which we were expected to pay back. But with no money coming in, Progress towards paying it back had come to a complete stop before it had even started. The Genius Project grant was a lifesaver for this reason. I was able to earn $390 towards my project, and every last penny of it has gone towards buying our giant piece of turf, paying for the fees for our referees, and even putting the rest away towards the loan. Now, as we got into November, everything started to fall into place. We met with our professional coach and teamed up with Carlsbad, also a first-year team, to start to get a feel of what an actual comedy sports match might look like. After that, we got into our groove. We had practice at lunch every Monday, and before we knew it, we were ready to start competing, but this was easier said than done. My big dreams of having our first ever comedy sports match on this PAC stage were seeming less and less like a reality as each day passed. They told me that every single day up until the end of the school year was booked. But I'd gotten this far. I wasn't going to let that stand in my way. So I tried and tried and tried again. And when that didn't work, I tried one last time. And 4 must be my lucky number, because after being put in contact with a 4th person, we were finally able to find a date. April 15th at 6 p.m. in the PAC, my project finally reached its goal. We held our first official comedy sports match, and it was absolutely unreal. Now, I've been performing on stage ever since the 4th grade, but this time was a little different. Coming out on stage and seeing everyone in the audience there to support me was such an incredible feeling and made me that much more excited to go on stage and do what I love. Now, in comedy sports, you sit out during one of the halves. So after I'd competed in the first half, I went out into the audience to take it all in. I was nothing short of blown away when I reflected on how far the team had come since October. Now, not only was this a great way to showcase the hard work we'd been putting in for the past 6 months, it was an incredible feeling knowing that I was able to get us here. Starting with nothing and ending with a legacy, or better yet, from concept to punchline. Now, I've learned so much more than just improv over these past 6 months. I've learned how to see something through the end, speed bumps and all, how to ask for help when you're in over your head, how to write a professional email, how to use social media as a marketing tool, and how to sell my crazy idea to 17 other people who had no idea what comedy sports even was. But most importantly, I learned the power of yes and. These 2 little words meant the difference between success and failure in my project, both on stage and off. So next time you're faced with a challenge, I hope you too can forget the word no and channel the power of yes and. Thank you.
Besides this last project's humor, it's almost comedic how funny Gavin and Lexi think they are.
It's all good. We know who the crowd's true favorites really are. Anyways. Thank you. Anyways, here at Sage, there's loads of topics to get into, from comedy sports to keyboard redesigning. That's right. Sam Liu took high school innovation to the next level.
Here is Sam Liu's project, where he felt empowered to never give up, challenging the roots of communication.
Sam, could you tell me a little about your Genius project?
Well, my Genius project here is called the Natural Grip Remote. And what it is, essentially, it captures the fluid intuitive motions that you have in your hand versus the rigid motions that you would have to do on a planar 2D keyboard traditionally.
Wow, and what innovated you to make this?
Well, I was always thinking, whenever my mom comes home, she always complains about the pain in her joints and her shoulders, and it's because of the typing and the long hours she has to work. So I thought of making something that would help not only her, but like everyone who has the same problem in office working.
Yeah, how'd you go about designing and coding this?
Well, creating this consisted of 3 parts. It was just like 3D modeling, coding, and then electrical engineering. But the 3D modeling was probably one of the harder parts because this is not an orthodox shape, right? It kind of looks like the inside of her palm and stuff. But to actually make the model, you would have to use an algorithm called photogrammetry. And what that does is essentially connect the dots diagram for like a computer, and then makes a mesh model for you. And then the programming would just be a lot of C and Python coding that would be able to translate GPIO inputs into keystrokes.
What's your vision for the future of this project?
Future? Well, I think that after college or during college, I would work on this a lot because I actually want to use the knowledge I gained from college and apply to this. And also have a patent coming up.
Awesome. What was your takeaway with the entire project?
The takeaway was I think that people should never drown into discouragement, no matter how hard and ambitious their project is. Like mine, people thought it was impossible, but even so, I completed it.
Wow, that's really awesome. Thank you so much for being here. So Sam, could you tell me?
Okay, wow. Sam is breaking the boundaries of innovation to create something that will help his mom and many others. And he already has a patent pending.
That is amazing. Sam did a great job at showcasing his passion for creation.
Our next speaker, Chris Beauchamp, completed a project that demanded vast amounts of creativity, time, and ambition that aimed at empowering himself and others who found themselves in a similar situation.
Chris gives us an inside look to not only his mind, but to his film, Daniel and Me. Lights, camera, action.
How are we all doing tonight? We're all doing pretty good? Nice. So, I'm gonna stop moving. Okay. So, as you all know, my name's Chris Beauchamp. And first thing I want to say is there's one word that people truly define me with. Movies. Movies. That's what makes me, that's what drives me, that's what keeps me, that's what pushes me every single day. And, well, not all movies, not all of them, but movies are my passion. Movies are what push me and push me to the next thing. But the one thing that I need to say is that when I was born, my first word was movie. Just want to say that. Yeah, that was a lie. That was a lie. That would be nice to say, but in all seriousness, film is a lot of things to me. Film, as I said, it's my driving passion. It's what keeps me moving forward. I was always wanting to tell stories as a little kid. As a kid, I would set up my Thomas the Tank Engine toys, and I'd set them up as if I was setting up for a shot. I know this motion seems a little weird, but that's what I was doing. I was really directing the trains somewhere, but it all started with a toy train. It really did. This little choo-choo train right there, with the creepy eyes and everything. That's where it all started. Just started with that little choo-choo train right there. And I remember one day that my mom asked to record myself as if I was telling my audience of a story of Thomas's day. And that story wasn't so great, I'll just say that. But like I said, that's where it started. It just started with that little train. And in 2016, I went to make my first short film. And then in 2017, I was then taken to Arizona to visit my grandmother, and I produced a short film with her as one of the stars. And this is where my journey began. Now, this is Daniel and me. It's not just the title of the TED Talk, but this is Daniel. His story begins with a goal. That goal being running from his hometown in Arizona to California. Now I know what you're thinking. The idea sounds impossible. But there's one thing that kept him going and what ultimately got him to the top of the mountain. His grandmother. His grandmother, beautifully played by my own grandma, is what drives him and keeps him moving forward. She gives Daniel this hat in saying that this is a good luck charm and what will help you with your goal. Throughout his run, Daniel wears this hat and showing that his grandma was always with him. There's a point where Daniel falls, where he is in fact running to the top of the mountain. Instead of stopping, Daniel rises back up and finds his way to the top. And then he returns back to his home. However, with one's journey come obstacles. The obstacle for Daniel being tragedy. His grandmother unfortunately passes away. Because of this, Daniel decides to leave everything behind, his friends, his family, and his goals, and feeling that he doesn't deserve them. This is where we enter the story for the second film. Several months pass, and Daniel has taken a different path for himself. We see his character living in a sewer tunnel, working at a job at a local hotel. We see his character dealing with many mixed bag of emotions, primarily depression. And the hat that Daniel has is now the only physical memory he has of his grandma. One day, a relative of his, Uncle George, notices him and asks if he can come to his place to stay and perhaps get something to eat. But what Daniel notices is that George is trying to bring him back to who he really was. So he refuses, and he asks if he can return back to his home. One day, actually not one day, the next morning. The next morning, Daniel is visited by a familiar figure while cleaning up in the bathroom. That figure being his grandmother. His grandmother tells him that she is always there for him and by him all the time. It is then that George decides to take Daniel to a park, where he tells Daniel the story of which his grandmother was under the same situation, and now her reaction was very similar to his. He teaches Daniel the concept of moving on. It is then that Daniel decides to visit his grandmother at her grave and leaves a certain item behind, that item being the hat and the clothing that he wore on that special day. This is where we enter my genius project. The first short was titled Believe. The second was titled Hurt. And now we come to the third in the closure, entitled Light. In this story, we find Daniel now weathered and older. We see his character dealing with emotions that he had in the second. As previously stated, he is dealing with emotions such as depression, but now dealing with a new emotion, isolation. We see his character thinking he has moved on, when in reality he hasn't. A character who has appeared in the other two, named Charlie, will appear in this film and will once again be played by one of my best friends, Dylan Voss. The film will tackle many different themes such as depression, isolation, tragedy, and rediscovery. This is meant to conclude an arc that started with my grandmother 2 years ago, who had unfortunately passed away this past year. At the end of this piece, she will be paid tribute and has a huge and significant role in the film. She was at the beginning of the story and will be honored at the end of it. Also, the film will touch on one of the many ways that a person deals with loss and how, finding peace, you find yourself as well. This is a message that I hope many resonate with when watching the film. Daniel's story and my own share lots of similarities, one of which is our struggles of dealing with depression and the feeling of being isolated. Throughout my childhood, I was called many names ranging from stupid, to idiot, to weird, to even mental at one point. And I never really had any true friends, as I had just people to just talk to. To everyone, I was a robot, a machine, a lifeless and motionless object. I can actually go point to the exact spots I sat in both my elementary and middle school years, and I can remember my emotions at the time. In 7th grade, where I sat on a brick wall for the past year or so, I took notice of a group that seemed warm, humbling, and caring towards one another. I desperately wanted to go hang out with them. I retained the courage to go talk to them, and I'm still friends with them to this. What I've learned throughout my Genius Project experience is that no one truly knows who they are, at least not at first. Self-discovery remains to be a practice that takes time. I've learned over the years that the ways I act towards others are traits that are not my own. I've been mimicking others all my life and hoping to gain some attention and not be pressed against a wall, quite literally, in fact. To put it simply, I was scared of simply being me. The biggest challenge with this project was to portray a character in such a depressive state, a state of which that takes me back to a time of which I don't like to remember. Tackling as a director, writer, and actor of this project were at times difficult and stressful. My hope is to make an impact to my family and those who have gone through the same emotions as I once did. But most importantly, here's what I hope you walk away with today. If someone that you know that seems lonely or doesn't seem like themselves, the best and simplest thing is to talk to them, learning things about the people around you. Everyone has gone through hard